My name is Ana Palacios. I am a service designer and I'm based in Colombia. I've been working in the field of strategic design for the past 15 years. And my biggest interest is really how to bring design to solve for problems and especially solve for sustainability problems. And in that path, I got into service design and I've been working in service design for the corporate world for 15 years.
My name is Daniel Tuitt. I've been working in service design for roughly about 12 years now. I'm currently the head of service design for Riyadh Air. So Riyadh Air is a brand new airline that'll be launching next year. So look out for it. Prior to that, I've done a lot of work in different organizations around the world and working with government, non-profits, large organizations and startups.
My name is Ana. I'm Brazilian. I've been living and working in London for the past 8 years and a half. My background is in graphic design, but I pivot recently to become like a service designer. I'm passionate about human centricity and hearing about the pain points and the experience of people, and then learning with that and to be able to improve and provide better experiences.
I'm Omar Vulpinari. I'm a strategic designer and I'm teaching and consulting in the fields of design thinking, service design, system design, and futures change.
I'm Arun Joseph. I'm a service designer from Toronto. In my earlier role, I was a service designer at IBM Z, and I was the first service designer in their mainframe business organization.
My name is Laura Duarte. I am a Colombian service designer, but also org design and strategy. I work mostly in the intersection of those three. I have experience working in consultancy, but also in the private sector and in government. What I truly love is to design new ways of thinking. I explore the ecological world and how it overlaps with the theory that we have developed as humans from a Latin American perspective.
So for me, service design, it's very much about like rethinking how we deliver services and experience to people to make that actually people friendly. So putting our users in the center of the process, and by users, not just the users of the services, but also all the people involved in providing and delivering and making that service.
For me, service design, it's a systemic view of trying to improve a customer's problem or a customer's experience from multiple perspectives. And service design and using service design tools, one could move certain parts of that experience in a more positive direction.
When you do service design, to me, service design is really assembling things so they make sense, because it's coming from industrial design, you know, like you have very like tangible things, you have materials, you have like processes, you have assembling lines, you have delivery and so on. But with services, because they're like intangible things, is very difficult to deliver those things in a cohesive way. So to me, what is service design is just making a coherence of an ecosystem of things so you can really deliver the value that a company is trying to deliver to their customers, both internally and externally.
For me, service design it's a way of thinking. So it's not a method. It's not like a process. It's a way of thinking. And if you have that way of thinking, if you have embedded into yourself, you see it everywhere. And the way of thinking is radically starting with who is involved on this, like who is impacted by this decision, by this strategy, by this program, by this thing that I'm trying to establish that I call a service or a mechanism or whatever I'm trying to put together to present to others. And then, of course, thinking about what is the context in which I'm going to insert that and how the context is going to react to whatever solution, program, strategy, mechanism, tool I insert, new behavior I insert into that context.
The way that I define service design is, imagine you go to a restaurant, for example. Think about your favorite restaurant. So usually as a customer, all you really care about is the food, maybe how much it costs, the decor of the restaurant, for example, and how the waiter treats you. That's one element of it. But there's usually these invisible elements which are behind the scenes, which could be a supporting element of a service. So that could be the kitchen, how's the food being prepared, and where's the food coming from a procurement perspective. But there's also elements such as what the payment system looks like and how do businesses actually make the decision of expanding or even opening a restaurant, for example. So there's business elements around this, but there's also a wider systems element of what are some of the new policies that come into place and what are some of the external factors that a business need to consider when they're developing a restaurant. That can go from all the way to the government is changing some of their policies. So it could be anything such as COVID, where everyone had to stay a certain distance away from each other, all the way to inflation has happened and how do you change price and what impact will that have on the cost of the products themselves, but also the customer and the actual waiter. So it's looking at a number of different key steps and how they're all impacted from a high level to the details. So zooming in and zooming back out again, the big picture versus the macro details.
I think that before getting to service design, we have to convene on what a service is. Okay, because very often people have different ideas of that term. A service is something you use, but you don't own. Just think of Uber versus buying a car. A service is a sequence of interactions between the service user and the service provider in a given time frame that will enable the user to satisfy a need. So service design is the process of holistic and empathic research, ideation, prototyping and testing, implementation of a service experience capable of creating value. Value in every service moment, from pre to post, before and after, for everyone involved, the users, the suppliers, the front stage, backstage, on all levels.
I think the main difference is the holistic part of service design. You are always considering everything in the ecosystem of the service you provide, while in graphic design is something very specific, usually very channel-based, like print materials or even digital materials. While service design, we usually have to see the end-to-end experience, so it can be quite complex. You can, for instance, go through like a service blueprint where you go into very granular details about the experience and the whole process, but you end up involving different departments of the company, different touch points, and you need to see everything. So I think it's this holistic approach where you really need to see the ecosystem of things, the level of complexity, the amount of people you need to involve. I think it's one of the main parts, but also co-creation and collaboration. I think in many other fields of design, you're able to do a lot of work isolated and on your own. While service design, you must involve a big amount of people, which is great. It's, I believe, where it comes the value, where we make what we are doing inclusive. We hear the voices and embrace different perspectives. So I think it's a much rich part of design.
I would say the key difference between service design and other UX disciplines would be, in service design, we are looking at maybe one or multiple or even nested levels of journeys to improve, and then we would kind of zoom in to identify the specific touch points in each journey and improve. Whereas as a design researcher, I think due to the product roadmap priorities and the business priorities, the focus is more on improving the experience of one or two touch points.
So I think that the service designer is a person and a professional that can take roles in leadership in organizations, because that idea of really seeing different levels of information, different dimensions, and all in a timeline. It's not static, and reality is not static. It's very chaotic, and so I think that's like the capability that service designers do bring to the table.
So a lot of my roles across different businesses involve interacting with different designers. I'll say what differs is I'm more end to end, and I'll explain what that means in a bit more detail, where I help the business with the idea of discovering what an idea or concept looks like, as well as aligning on it, defining how the opportunity will evolve over time, designing the concept, but also the delivery of that idea. So there's a concept that we know within the design world called a double diamond, where you've got the divergent and convergent elements of working across a process. Service designers go a little bit beyond that, but we focus on the problem stage and the solution stage in most cases, which really helps us. One, we don't go too in depth all the way compared to an interaction designer or a researcher, or a product designer, or even a policy designer in some case, or content designer. We go across and think about how everything's connected. So there's a lot of elements of systems thinking in some ways, where we try to really think about how do we involve the right people at the right time, but how do we think about the big picture, but also zoom in and understand problems when needed, whether it's the problem stage or the solution stage of the whole process.